What if sadness wasn't the enemy? What if the heaviness in your chest, the quiet ache in your heart, and the tears you fight to hold back were not signs of weakness, but the very tools life uses to make you stronger? In a world obsessed with constant happiness, we are taught to treat sadness as something broken that must be fixed. We medicate it, we distract ourselves from it, we bury it deep until it becomes a silent poison. But the Stoics, those ancient masters of resilience, saw things differently. They believed that sadness could be a teacher, a mirror, and even a friend, if only we learned to look at it with the right eyes. And maybe, just maybe, understanding sadness through a Stoic lens could change not only how we suffer, but how we live. Sadness is often feared because it feels like losing control. It takes us out of the predictable patterns of daily life and drops us into a place where nothing feels stable. The Stoics, however, would say that control was always an illusion to begin with. They knew that life is unpredictable, that pain is inevitable, and that clinging to comfort is a sure way to invite more suffering. To them, the real question wasn't how to avoid sadness, but how to respond when it arrives. Imagine a storm rolling in over the sea. The waves grow higher, the sky darkens, the wind howls. You could scream at the clouds, curse the water, and wish for calm. Or you could become like the stoic sailor, tying down the ropes, adjusting the sails, and moving with the storm instead of against it. Sadness, in this metaphor, is the storm. It will come whether you invite it or not. The Stoic response is to prepare the mind so that, when the waves hit, you can navigate without losing yourself. One of the most important Stoic principles is the distinction between what is within your control and what is not. Your control lies in your thoughts, your judgments, and your actions. Everything else, other people's opinions, the weather, the passage of time, even the fact of your mortality, lies outside it. Sadness often arises when we try to control the uncontrollable. We grieve because something slipped away. After all, life didn't align with our expectations. The Stoics would gently point out that we never truly owned those things to begin with. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote in his Meditations, "Do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." He was speaking of fear, but the same applies to sadness. The weapons of reason, clarity, acceptance, self-discipline are our anchor. They don't erase the pain, but they keep us from being swept away by it. It's important to understand that the Stoics were not cold, emotionless statues. They felt deeply. Seneca mourned the loss of friends. Epictetus spoke of the bonds between people as being among the greatest treasures of life. But they refused to let grief dominate them. They practiced the art of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, imagining loss before it happened, not to dwell in negativity, but to remind themselves that everything is temporary. By rehearsing the possibility of loss, they made the shock of sadness less paralyzing when it inevitably came. Think about the last time you were overcome with sadness. Perhaps it was the end of a relationship, the passing of someone you loved, or a dream that collapsed before it could take flight. In that moment, your mind likely replayed the past, clung to what-if scenarios, and wrestled with the unfairness of it all. The Stoic would acknowledge these thoughts, but they would also remind themselves that the past is beyond reach, the future is unknown, and only the present moment can be shaped by reason. There's a kind of liberation in this. If sadness no longer feels like an enemy to be defeated, but a natural signal from the human condition, then we can stop wasting energy resisting it. Instead, we can learn from it. Sadness can point to what we value most. If you grieve deeply over the loss of a friend, it means you loved deeply. If you feel the ache of failure, it means you cared about the goal you pursued. The Stoics would say that sadness reveals our attachments, and by examining them, we gain insight into ourselves. This doesn't mean the Stoic path is easy. It's one thing to read about acceptance, and another to practice it when your world feels like it's falling apart. The first step is to recognize that emotions are not commands. They are signals. You can feel sadness without becoming sad. This is the heart of Stoic emotional mastery, not suppression, but separation. Epictetus put it bluntly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Sadness is what happens. Wisdom is how you react. That doesn't mean forcing yourself into a false smile or pretending you don't care. It means allowing the feeling to exist without letting it dictate every choice you make. You acknowledge the storm, but you steer the ship. Modern psychology echoes this idea. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective therapeutic approaches today, is rooted in the same principle. Our thoughts about events shape our feelings more than the events themselves. A Stoic would recognize this immediately. They would encourage us to question the narratives we tell ourselves in sadness. Is it truly the end, or is it simply a change? Is the loss total, or is there something new it makes possible? By shifting our interpretation, we shift our experience. The Stoic also knows that sadness, like all emotions, is temporary. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the impermanence of all things, empires, seasons, human lives, even the stars. He saw this not as a reason for despair, but as a call to gratitude. If nothing lasts forever, then every moment, even the painful ones, has a strange kind of beauty. Sadness reminds us that we are alive, that we have loved, that we have invested pieces of our soul into the world. In a way, sadness can be proof of a life well lived. The person who never feels it is either profoundly lucky or profoundly disconnected. The Stoics would argue that to live fully is to accept the full range of human experience, not just joy and triumph, but also sorrow and loss. They saw life as a constant exchange, a giving and taking, a flow in which nothing can be permanently held. This acceptance does not weaken us. On the contrary, it strengthens us. When we stop demanding that life be free of sadness, we stop being shattered when sadness appears. We begin to meet it with calm curiosity, asking, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Where does it point? What can I become through this? Sadness can be a forge. It burns away illusions. It strips life to its essentials. It forces us to confront what truly matters. And in that stripped-down state, we sometimes discover a clarity that joy cannot give. The Stoics sought clarity not by chasing pain, but by refusing to run from it. They knew that only in facing what we fear can we free ourselves from it. If you can see sadness not as a punishment, but as an inevitable guest, you can prepare for its visits. You can choose to welcome it in, offer it a seat, and listen to what it has to say, before politely showing it the door when it's time to move forward. This is the art of living with sadness, not being ruled by it. And perhaps the most radical Stoic idea is this: sadness can coexist with peace. You can be in pain and still be steady. You can grieve and still be grateful. The two are not enemies. They are threads in the same tapestry, each giving the other meaning. The Stoics understood that peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of an unshakable anchor within. But if we dare to listen to sadness instead of running from it, we discover that it has a vocabulary of its own. Every emotion is a signal, and sadness speaks of loss, of unmet expectations, of values we hold dear. Stoics didn't see it as a weakness to feel this. They saw it as an invitation to examine what truly matters. Epictetus wrote that what disturbs us is not events themselves, but our opinions about them. The sadness you feel may be pointing to an attachment, a belief, or a desire that needs reevaluation. This is not about becoming indifferent to life. It's about freeing yourself from chains you didn't even know you were wearing. Think about the times sadness hits you hardest. It's rarely random. Often, it's when something you thought was secure slips away. A relationship, a job, a sense of identity. In those moments, the Stoic asks, was my peace of mind built on something fragile? If it were, then the pain is not just in the loss, but in the shock of realizing your foundation was less stable than you imagined. Sadness, then, becomes a teacher. It is showing you where you have built your sense of self on shifting sand. Another core Stoic insight is that sadness is intertwined with love. The deeper we care for something or someone, the more vulnerable we are to loss. Marcus Aurelius never advised us to love less, so we hurt less. He advised us to remember that nothing and no one is ours to keep forever. This doesn't diminish the joy of love, it heightens it. When you realize that every conversation with a friend could be the last, every morning with someone you love is a gift, and sadness stops being an intruder. It becomes a quiet companion, reminding you to cherish what's here now. Modern psychology backs this up. Grief counselors and cognitive therapists alike note that trying to fix sadness like it's a problem often backfires. Suppressing it makes it heavier. Stoicism, far from being cold, offers the tools to sit with sadness without letting it consume you. You acknowledge it. You give it space. And then, when the time comes, you let it go, not because you have forced it out, but because it has taught you what it needed to teach. The Stoics also recognized that life is cyclical. There are seasons for joy, for struggle, for growth and rest. Sadness can be the winter of the soul, a time when things slow down, when the external world feels barren, when it seems like nothing is moving forward. But winter is not the end. It's a part of the cycle that makes spring possible. By accepting this rhythm instead of fighting it, you free yourself from the exhausting need to always be happy. A modern obsession the Stoics would have found baffling. And here's the paradox. The more you accept sadness as part of life, the less control it has over you. Think of it like a storm you can't stop. You could stand there shouting at the clouds, begging them to disappear. Or you could find shelter, wait it out, and learn from the way the rain nourishes the earth. Your resistance to sadness is what turns it into suffering. Your acceptance of it is what transforms it into wisdom. It's also worth noting that Stoic acceptance is not passive resignation. It doesn't mean you give up on changing what you can. Stoicism demands action where action is possible, but it draws a clear line between what you control and what you don't. You can control your actions, your perspective, your values, but not other people's choices, not the inevitability of change, not the passing of time. Sadness often comes from trying to control what was never in your hands to begin with. One of the most powerful practices you can adopt from the Stoics is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. This is not morbid pessimism. It's preparation. When you consider, in a calm state of mind, that loss, disappointment, and endings are inevitable, you begin to meet them with a steadier heart when they arrive. It doesn't mean sadness disappears, but it no longer takes you by surprise, and it no longer convinces you that something has gone wrong with life. Sadness, seen through the Stoic lens, is also a mirror. It reflects the gap between how life is and how we wish it to be. This gap is the birthplace of much human suffering. But when you shrink the gap, not by lowering your standards, but by aligning your expectations with reality, you reduce unnecessary pain. You stop demanding that life be something it has never promised to be. This is not cynicism. It's liberation. In the end, sadness is not your enemy. It is a messenger. It is proof that you are alive, that you have cared, that something has mattered to you deeply enough to leave an imprint. The Stoics teach us not to silence the messenger, but to read the message well. And once you've read it, to carry on with a heart made wiser by the journey. So the next time you feel that familiar heaviness, pause. Don't rush to drown it in noise or numb it with distractions. Instead, ask yourself, what is this sadness trying to show me? What can I learn from it? How can it shape me into someone stronger, more compassionate, more grounded? This is the art of transforming pain into wisdom, loss into perspective, and sorrow into strength. The truth is, sadness will visit you many times in your life, but it does not have to own you. By embracing the Stoic way, you learn to meet it with dignity, to walk alongside it without losing your balance, and to part with it when it's time, grateful for what it has taught you. What about you? How has sadness shaped you? Has it ever taught you something you wouldn't have learned otherwise? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be the light someone else needs right now. If you found meaning in this message, give it a like and subscribe for more explorations into the philosophy that makes life not just bearable, but profound. Remember, life is not about avoiding the storms. It's about learning to dance in the rain.